Welcome to the office. This is Office Hours. Welcome to episode number 30, big 3-0. Big 3-0 for the old Office Hours. It's good to have you here. It's good to be here in my office where I work. Today, in the chances that this might be your very first episode of Office Hours, let me lay it out for you. Let me put it out there on the table. Here's how this shiz is gonna go down, my friends. What we're gonna do is you're gonna go back in time and you're gonna submit your questions to www.adam-koble.com/office-hours. And then, in the past, I'm going to have read them. And I'm going to have listened to your beautiful voices. And I'm going to have thought about your question. And I'm going to have prepared an overlay and done some production work. And then, I'm going to have answered them on my show. But if none of that happened, if you don't have a time machine, if you can't cast magic spells that transport you back in time, don't fret. Don't worry. It's okay. You still have a chance. There's many more episodes to come. Perhaps the question that you will submit today will be on a future episode of Office Hours. That's how that shit works in a roundabout way. So if you want to get in on this action, just go there, fill out the form, do the thing. And in the order in which I receive them, I will be going through these questions 3 at a time, 3 a week, and trying to discuss my point of view vis-a-vis your questions. So today, let us begin with as common a question as ever there were in putting together a role-playing group and dealing with a very particular kind of character.
Hi Adam, this is Caiaphas, also known as Stuart, and I was wondering what to do when you have a player in the group who doesn't buy in and wants to play the cool loner off on his own while the group is trying to accomplish something else. Thanks.
Yes. Come, pray with me, my friends. Praise him, the loner, tough and cool, edgiest of lords. Hallowed be his name, his kingdom come, dull at the table as it is in fanfic. Amen. Let's just get this out there, right? The cool loner that doesn't give a shit about anything sucks. They suck in role-playing games. They suck. They're boring. They're bullshit. Get the fuck out. Not you, Caiaphas. Caiaphas? I always go with this. I've said your name wrong before, and I'm sorry. Caiaphas. Just get them out. Get them out of here. You're fired. Terrible, terrible PC character concept. I'm sorry, but this is just like it's a shitty character idea. You can't do it. But here's the thing, all right? Here it's not your player's fault. It's not their fault. It's not. It's Tolkien's fault. And it's R.A. Salvatore's fault, and it's Bob Kane's fault, and it's Moorcock's fault, and I mean, let's throw some blame at Hideo Kojima. You know, it's all of those people's faults because we're inoculated against earnest cooperation and team play by the likes of our dear friends Aragorn and Batman and Elric and Drizzt and Solid Snook, because it's just so fucking cool to be dark and brooding and so super uncool to care about our friends. Fuck that, right? Yeah. I'm gonna sit at the back of the inn and smoke a pipe while the hobbits do all the hard work. But here's the thing, right? We're playing games with our friends. Yes? And as such, we're making agreements to a kind of behavior and play that's defined by both the game that we're playing and its rules and structures, and by the social contract we establish by even agreeing to play in the first place. I mean, on the one hand, we're probably playing a game about a group of people, right? The game is structured around the group. We are a party of wizards. We're a cabal of adventurers. We're a well, God help us, we're a coterie of vampires. Yeah, that's right. Even the edgelordiest of all role-playing game developers, even the broodingest Dark Lordian of all of them, had custom group nouns. That's how much of a group we are, even in those games. Even in games that by their very nature might incline us towards the tortured Toreador, right? And I think that speaks to the experience of role-playing games as fundamentally a group experience, right? And every group is made up of individuals, and we'll talk about that in a second, but let's start there, right? And some games expressly call this out, right? Some games acknowledge both the starting point of a campaign and the potential drift once the game starts as a group activity. For example, Vincent, dear sweet Vincent Baker, in Apocalypse World says to us, your characters don't have to be close friends, but they do have to know each other and work together and should be allies. They might become enemies in play, but they shouldn't start out enemies. Now, this is very drastic, right? This is very black and white. This is painting allies and enemies and doesn't really address the, like, gray area, like, I'm not a dark Jedi, but I'm not a Jedi either. I can do whatever I want. Lightsaber, right? But it does say in no uncertain authorial statements, like from a game design perspective, you have to be allies. They have to know each other and work together and should be allies. Have to, right? This isn't fluff or bullshit. It's in the rule book for a reason, because it's a fucking rule. It's how you play the game. It's exactly as important as rolling 2d6 plus hot or taking 1 harm. It's in the rule book because the rule book is an instruction manual on how to play the game. This is not optional. Now, if every game just did that, if every game just said in the player's handbook, you are a group of adventurers who are allied together for a specific reason, which is to say, fight monsters and kill them for their treasure, or avoid them to get their treasure, depending on the D&D you're playing. If it just said that and made it a rule, we would be violating those rules by being the loner, tough and cool, by being like, yeah, I'm not really part of the group. I'm part of the narrative, but I'm extant to the group. Now, most games don't do that, right? Most games, it is an implicit general concept that demands working together, not an explicit rule. Like in Shadowrun, you, by default, play a group of runners who band together for jobs because if you didn't, the megacorps and the nation states and the dragons for president would eat you alive if you tried to go it alone. You might not be runners, you might be a dockwagon crew, you might be a band, you might be whatever, but it's focused on group play. It's focused on being together. And now, again, this is narrative. There's nothing in the rules that say you have to be a team, but all the fiction and the art depicts Shadowrun teams. All of the fluff in the game insinuates it. I wish the game was more aggressive about it, but it's not, and that's how it goes. In Vampire, you play a group of neonates bound in your eternal darkness together by your lust for blood, and also like some clan stuff or something about an antediluvian, and basically you're nobodies, and the big bad vampires are going to eat you unless you band together. And if you're Sabbat, and this is why I think if you're a vampire fan, you're going to understand these proper nouns. If you're a Sabbat group, if you're playing the bad guy vampires, it actually works better because you're probably mechanically blood bonded to each other. The rules in that kind of vampire game make you a team. And I fucking love that, right? As we mentioned in D&D, you're a group of adventurers and you work together because despite the fact that you're all a bunch of homicidal murderers, you have complementary skills for your larger goal. And all of this stuff in these games, all of the stuff in these games are implicit, right? The unit is an implicit thing, and some games make a mistake and don't talk about this, but I think part of your mandate during character creation, and I wish, again, more games would talk about this, but I think that your mandate in character creation is to make a character that fits the kind of game that you and your players have decided to play together. It's your job to recognize the group mechanisms of the game, the dynamics of the game, the social contract you've established, and make a character that fits that, because if you don't, you're working against the other players. You don't all have to be the same alignment or even samely motivated exactly, but the point is you're going to work together because it's the fucking premise of the game. It's why you're together. Like, imagine, if you will, for a moment, your favorite franchises as if they were campaigns in which the GM let the players get away with whatever bullshit character lonerism they wanted to, right? Imagine Star Trek, right? You can envision the bridge, right? It's kind of janky set, the bridge of the Enterprise, and pan the camera of your mind's eye across the bridge, right? Who do you see there? You see Captain Kirk, right? You see Kirk, brave at the helm. You see Mr. Spock, his loyal companion. You see Lieutenant Uhura, brilliant linguist Lieutenant Uhura, all members of Starfleet, and we continue the pan across, and we see Stavros, the fast-talking dwarf from the mines of Glurp, and his fabled magic axe, and then a chip on his shoulder. I feel like being a tough loner who's too cool and too brooding to engage the group dynamic is as egregious as intentionally genre fucking a campaign because you can't bother to engage in good faith the concept that the rest of the group has decided on. If you do this, it's poop. It's bad play, and you're being crappy. Don't do it. However, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna violate everything I just said. All right, are you ready? If you want to be the Lord Baron Darkraven of Castle Bloodstein, you're gonna need to make an effort to convince the group that his royal gloominess is going to be a fit for the concept of the game after all, and give them the opportunity to buy into your specific desires, right? You can make a case for the High Prince of Castle Bloodstein if you can make him fit the concept, right? And this is not on the group to include you. Don't be that person. Don't make the group bend to you. Bend your concept to the group, right? Because this can work. This can totally work. Like, to go back to that Star Trek example, that awful Star Trek example, perhaps Game Master Roddenberry originally was like, okay, I have this idea for a campaign, and it's about humans who've traveled to space in the distant future, and about egalitarianism, and about exploring social issues in a sci-fi place. What do y'all think? And, like, Shatner was like, I got an idea for a character, and Walter Koenig was like, I got an idea for a character, and they all made human characters, and then Nimoy was like, you know what? I want to be an alien. Can I be a Vulcan, please? And everybody kind of side-eyes each other, and they're like, hold on. I thought this was going to be about humans. And then Nimoy busts out, they're like, yes, but by being inhuman, do not I shine a light upon your humanity? Can I not be the character that proves the rule? Can we discuss humanity from both the inside and the outside? And everybody nodded and stroked their chins thoughtfully, and GM Roddenberry said, yeah, man, you want to be a Vulcan? We can make this shit work. Because the idea here is that Lord Darkraven can fit a campaign if the buy-in is there initially, right? Look at Aragorn, right? And I'm thinking particularly of movie Aragorn, because movie Aragorn is way more of an edgelord than book Aragorn. Book Aragorn's a bit of a keener. In a way, Boromir is almost the worst example of this, because he's the like the guy in the party who's like, yeah, but what if we don't do it the heroic way? I know this is going to be a heroic parable, but what if I'm like kind of a bad guy, kind of, but you know, not really. And they're like, yeah, fine, man, but you're going to get killed. You're going to get iced. Sorry, Sean. It's about permission, right? It's about permission. And it's about fitting yourself to the group. It's about saying, yes, I want to be the edgy loner, but I'm going to be the edgy loner that works with the group. This is the exception to my generally edgy loner behavior, where I'm like, I really want to work alone, but to save the world, we have to work together, right? You can make it work. And this is not on you as a GM. This is not on your players. This is on the Brooding Edgelord to figure out what they can do to make themselves fit. Because they need to be saying, even if my character might seem on the outset or seem from the outside not to fit the concept of the game, I want to play this game with you. I care about you and your priorities as a group, and I care about my own priorities, and I want all this stuff to fit. I want my brooding lonerism to make the game more interesting and more fun and not less interesting and not about me. I'm not trying to steal the spotlight. I'm not trying to be a dick. I would like to try to make this concept shine some new light on the adventuring party, right? And if you believe them, if you trust them, then you can make that work, or they can, and it's on them. But if your player didn't do this, if they just came to the table and like, I'm a human ranger, and you were like, okay, and they're like, and I don't give a fuck about anybody. I'm smoking a cigarette. Yeah, sunglasses, right? If they're just Batmaning their way through your campaign, you need to sit them down and be like, listen, Bruce, buddy, your character is pretty disruptive. You're not really like playing the game as we all agreed to initially, and you're kind of bringing everybody down. You're making me feel uncomfortable. You're making the game less fun for everyone. Can we curtail that shit? And if they say to you, yeah, I can be Justice League Bruce Wayne. I can be Justice League Batman. I can grudgingly go with the group in character, but happily go with the group out of character. Cool. Give them a little hug. Tell them you're sorry their parents died and get back to it. But if they throw a smoke bomb at your feet and disappear with a gruff, the city needs me, then you can just disinvite them. Because they're being rude and Batman isn't cool. Batman is an asshole. All right? All right. That's what I think.
So my question's about severity of punishment and trying to make a game more realistic. My group decided to go to a kingdom and work for a king. Now, the king's a nice and generous man, but he has his limits. One of the group members are played as a belligerent, well, not belligerent, but an asshole, and always speaks his mind. The problem is, after a certain while, the king would obviously have a problem with this and react. Now, in my mind, the perfect way to deal with a man who likes to speak his mind inappropriately is to rip out his tongue, being a king and all. The problem is, the player in question is a warlock, and most of the spells require a verbal component. Ripping out his tongue would literally make him useless. I want something like that to show emphasis that you can't just do what you want and run roughshod over everything, but at the same time I don't want to completely cripple a character. How do I, interweave this or try to make it better for the players?
So to be fair to David here, if you're watching and not just listening to this, I summarized this question because the actual text of the question was quite long, right, and very specific. So this isn't, I summarized it with, I have a player who's being an ass. Should I use the narrative to punish him? But that's not exactly the nuanced level of question. But you heard in his own words, you heard what David asked. And I think that what drove me to this question, what really grabbed me about this question is that it's a great question phrased in a very dangerous way. And while these questions run, while the audio runs, I roll them over in my head. I give myself a chance to sort of rethink them based on my notes. And I watched the chat, and I could see some GMs in chat noping pretty hard on this question, because I think, and I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about a personal struggle of mine. Let's get on in. Come in close, friends. I'm gonna level with you. So this is an urge that I understand. We're gonna get a little real for a minute. I want to talk to you about a way that I think I struggle with being a bad game master. Right? This is a weakness of mine. It's a shitty habit, and I have to struggle to break this habit. It's just between me and you and however many thousand people watch this, but don't tell anybody. So sometimes when the players are really having a lucky streak, right? Maybe they're hitting one crit after another. Maybe they haven't failed a roll in combat in 2 sessions. Maybe they're playing like just fucking like super optimal characters, and they're just murder fucking their way through every possible thing I throw at them with just like no trouble at all. Like just that encounter, nothing. You want to get another one? Fuck him. We killed him. We're good. Or maybe they're just being PCs, right? Maybe they're just being PCs and they're being shit to the NPCs and they're just killing people for no apparent reason. They're just blasting their way through the characters that I give a shit about, right? Maybe I've created an NPC, I've started to get attached to them, and they're just like, blam. I shoot him in the face. Haha, I'm PC. I do what I want. Sometimes when those 3 things happen, sometimes all at once, sometimes I get mad. I can feel it, right? And I know what this, I've been GMing long enough that I know what this feeling feels like. It like wells up in my guts. It's this like teeth gritting, like, oh, fuck, this is supposed to be challenging. That was an encounter that was supposed to be difficult. What the fuck, you guys? Come on. And it feels like they're not cooperating. It feels like I'm losing, right? And that sucks. That's a shitty feeling. I hate that feeling, but I have it. It happens because I get mad that I put in the effort to make this fucking game good, and these fucking clowns are ruining it. I get mad that they get to have their way and that I don't, and then it sucks. I can feel it. I can feel it in my guts. And that feeling almost always leads me to a place where I realize, wait, fuck this. I'm literally God. And then I want to strike down upon them with great vengeance and furious anger, but I resist. Because in that moment, while I might want to say, fuck you, fuck your smite crits, he has 40 more hit points than I originally wrote down. So whatever, I get another turn. I resist saying, fine, the cops show up and they just shoot you all to death. You're dead. The campaign's over. I resist saying, well, okay, yeah, fine, but this monster has special fuck you rules. So, whatever. Because the GM role is about wielding authority. And authority is about control, my friends. It's about control not over the world or the mechanisms of the game, the narrative of play, the flow of combat. It's not about controlling any of those things. It's about self-control. Authority is about being able to do what we are tasked to do, which is to say, control everything in the universe with a modicum of recognition that we have such potential to be unfair. Those little temper tantrums, those little GM welling up, you're fucking my game temper tantrums that we want to have, that's not what GMing is about. Authority as the GM is not, it's not taken, it's not seized, it's not an autocracy of game mastery. It's something that's given to us. It's a gift given to us in trust, in faith by our players. It's an authority granted to us under the belief that we won't use it like a vindictive piece of shit just when we're not getting our way. And we as game masters have this great and sacred responsibility to protect that trust. Our goal and mandate has to come from a place where we're not being pieces of shit. Because when your players stomp all over the consequences you've created and they fuck up everything in their path because they're PCs and that's what they do, to continue a reference, I'm going to say you might feel a slight sting. That's pride fucking with you. Fuck pride. Pride only hurts. It never helps. You fight through that shit. Because here's the thing. Here's the thing. When we wield the almighty power of everything else, we need to wield it carefully and gently and with just cause and with righteous intent. Because to be real, I think under all that punitive talk, under all that tongue-cutting, I'm gonna fuck you up because you're being a dick talk, I think what you're really hoping to do here, David, is be righteous, be just, and create a world of verisimilitude in which even if you're not doing any punishing, consequences feel real. Consequence and punishment are not the same thing, right? They can feel like it, but always show consequences. Never punish. Never. Game masters do not get to punish players. They're not our children. They're not our students. We're not cops, right? We're not here to crack skulls. We're here to contribute together. We have different authority, but that authority is given to us laterally. You can probably feel my like socio-anarchism coming through here, and that I don't like games are flat hierarchies, even though they don't always seem that way. You cannot punish your players because you do not have the right, nor do I, nor does any GM. And what we often do when we come face to face with the desire to punish our players is we try to get the narrative to punish them for us. Where I'm not a cop, but I have an army, an infinite army of fictive cops that I can use to punish. We fight proxy wars with our own frustration, right? Oh, cool. Dave's really good at Dungeons and Dragons. And you tore up my counter, Dave. I'm feeling a little frustrated right now. Maybe I'm having a bad day, and this is making me feel like a bad GM because I'm not challenging you, and I'm feeling frustrated with my own inadequacies as a game. You know what? Fuck you. Orcus punches you in the eye. You're dead. You're fucking dead. I win. I win at Dungeons and Dragons. Game's over. Let's go home. Don't do that. Don't be that way. Right? Don't be that GM. I get it. Like, I get why you feel that way. I get that it can feel frustrating to come up against that. Like, I want to challenge you, and you're fucking killing me in this, and I'm feeling frustrated. I feel like I'm losing at Dungeons and Dragons. I feel like I'm having a really hard time. I want to like kick back using the narrative because I'm allowed, right? I can point to the rules, and the rules say I can do whatever the fuck I want, especially the golden rule. Golden rule says I can just kill you, and haha, I'm the best. But your inner humanity, the person that you are that's playing this game with these people, recognizes that that's a bullshit behavior. And it makes sense, but I think we need to eliminate the punitive stuff here. NPCs punish, GMs forgive. And what I mean to say here is that you have to live by the rules of the world, right? You have to play in a way that feels legit and real and has integrity for you and your players. And honestly, the safest, most fair way to do this is prep. Prep keeps us honest. Because if you write something down before you get into that moment, if you prepare for a situation outside of that feeling of wanting to punish your players, you're being legit, you're being real, because you can look back and you can say, I wrote this in a moment when I was feeling neutral about this, right? I understand the king is an NPC. I know what the king is about. I know what this situation is about beforehand, and I'm feeling frustrated now, but all I gotta do is stick to my prep. I cannot give this monster more hit points. This monster has 46 hit points. You've dealt it 46 damage. It is dead. I am a good GM. I am following my prep. I will not bend the rules just because I'm upset about the current results. Just because I want to ball up your character sheet and make you choke on it, it's not about that feeling. Because I wrote down 2 days ago, the king will have anyone who insults his beautiful frock executed. I did so in a sanguine moment. And here we are, and you're shit-talking the frock. And it's not that I'm mad, it's that I know the king is going to have you killed because you said a mean thing about the frock, and it's time to die, right? Prep is honest. Prep is real. Prep does not have feelings. At least you gotta try to write it that way. Create a world whose reactions are general and about the characters, the NPCs, not your PCs, right? Don't respond to PC behavior specifically. Respond to it in the way that the world you've created would. Make the king a character. Think about the king's beliefs. Think about his instincts. Think about his traits. Reflect his kingliness, not your frustration or annoyance with that player. Because prep will help you. And I don't mean necessarily just D&D style prep, right? Like, yes, D&D style prep keeps you honest in that if they kick down the door and in this room there are 10 goblins, you can't change that just because you want there to be 20 goblins. I mean, you can. You actually can change it. You can. You're the GM. Sometimes that's a thing you need to do. You need to adjust the challenge rating of stuff, but that's not the point. The point is that if you have prep, you can stick to it. It gives you something to fall back on. But you can also do this prep more generally, right? This is where you can look at more general stuff like, you know, beliefs, instincts, and traits. You can look at things like fronts. You can look at all the prep that you've done, whatever your game, and you can let that be your guide when you're feeling that frustration. Anyway. The other thing, though, and like, let's be real, let's address this, because I heard you ask in your question about your player being a bit of a dick, because players can do this. This isn't always going to be the fault of your own internal anger struggle. This might include the player being kind of a pushy shit and getting away with things because players are used to getting away with things because they have all these mechanics behind them. This person might be playing Cantor Hague, right? Being kind of a jerk in character. And what I think you can do is, again, to lean on your prep, create a world that feels real and play that, but talk to them outside of this and say, like, if they're not going to come to you, like I did with Cantor, to my group and say, hey, so we've played a few games of Blades, and I get that my character is being kind of an asshole, right? Cantor Hague is a brash jerk. And I wanted him to be a counterpoint to, like, how obviously capable RC and that other weirdo are, right? I recognize your effectiveness as characters and players of this game, and I want to play someone who's going to shine a light on that. I want to go back to the previous question, I want to be your Spock. Well, he's kind of like Ponfar Spock, but you know what I mean. So I want to highlight you as being effective by my buffoonery. So I had that talk with the other people in the group and with John, with my GM. But the thing is, if they don't do that, let's go back to GM rule number 1, talk to your players, right? So talk to that person. Tell them, hey, I'm feeling really frustrated with your character's behavior. Your character's being a prick, and it doesn't feel like it fits the world everybody else is playing in, right? Can you step into author stance for a minute? Can you tell me why you're motivated to play your character like such an asshole? And if they respond, well, it's just my character. Like I made a neutral evil character. I'm just being neutral evil. Then show them the door, or at least try to re-educate them about the whole, if you play a dick and use that character to be a dick to your friends, you are a dick. But have them explain to you what their motivations are, and explain to them, sure, like, that's cool. You can be a shitty warlock if you want to, but the king might not take kindly to that. And agreeing to the campaign premise, which is we all work for the king, means that you have to act in a way that will not have the king murder you. This would be like if Lord of the Rings partway through had a character suddenly murder the hobbits in their sleep and be like, haha, suckers, I was working for Sauron all along, I've ruined your fun, and run off, right? They didn't agree to that. Even Sean Bean had to have that conversation with Viggo and Elijah and the team and be like, look, partway through this campaign, I might have to leave, so maybe it'd be cool if I ended up being the flawed character that couldn't resist the ring, right? And they all bought in. And you know what? If you're Warlock and the whole group all buy in together, if the group is like, all right, the Warlock is treading on thin ice, that's awesome, fuck the king anyway, you're either going to have a campaign where everybody is secretly undermining the king, or everyone acknowledges that the Warlock is eventually going to get their tongue ripped out. You've got that permission to play to that. Everybody is on board. But if the party recoils, if the party's like, ooh, this sounds bad, and I'd really like to keep working for the king, and please, Warlock players, stop doing that. You're kind of ruining the game. Maybe that character is not a good fit for the party. But what you can do as a GM, and this is what keeps me honest. Play by the rules, right? Court of Swords is a lethal game because I play by the rules. I choose my encounters on the hard end of the difficulty scale because I want to challenge my players. They all bought in. The campaign premise is that it's like kind of hard mode D&D and they want to be challenged, right? We've all bought in. I got their permission to challenge them. I'm playing by the rules. The other thing is be a GM first, an annoyed person second, and use your annoyance, use your frustration, channel it into creativity, and announce future badness instead. Because it's always been my belief that if you warn your players in the fiction about the harsh, dark cloud of eternal torment that's going to come fucking raining down on them if they continue down this path, they have a chance to change their shitty ways. And when they don't, because God knows they won't. God knows they won't do it. You're going to be justified when you're like, yeah, so the King's Royal Guard show up in your room in the middle of the night. And they drag you off and they put a hot coal in your mouth, right? Play that encounter out. Use the rules to figure it out. Don't just be like you get murdered in your sleep, but warn them. Announce that future badness. Because storms are coming, right? Just check in with yourself consistently, right? Look at yourself, look at your own behavior, and be honest about how much of the king being a vengeful jerk is the king being mad about the behavior of a player, and how much of it is you being pissed at a player for like derailing your game. And then work it out accordingly. I trust you. I trust you, David. And I think your players do too. Maybe that's why you're the GM. Do good. Don't abuse your GMing power.
Hey Adam, my name's Trent, and I've got a pretty specific question for you. Recently I've been working on creating my own tabletop role-playing game. I currently GM for a group of players who are looking to start a new campaign. I've convinced them to playtest my new game for the next campaign. Now my question is, how do I prepare my players and myself for a campaign in which the rules may change on a week-by-week basis? Thanks, Adam.
You're doing it, Trent. You're doing it. Look at you. You're a fledgling designer. You spent lots of time playing other people's games, and you found them not bad, not wrong, but you found them wanting. And you've worn your GM's hat before, and it's a comfortable hat. Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's a new hat. Maybe it's still fitting to your proverbial head. But you know how rules work. You've seen the narrative, and you've watched it come crashing against the mechanisms. And sometimes it's beautiful timpanis and cymbals, and other times it's a cacophony of dropping a tuba down an elevator shaft. And you've thought to yourself, Trent, my friend, you need something new. You need something that's going to be different from all this. You've got a need, Trent. You've got a bad need. Maybe it's a need that you can fill with a hack of something you already love. Or maybe it's brand new, right? Maybe you've got this awkward, slippery thing that isn't a game yet, but it's starting to feel real. And so what you do Trent, is what all humans do. When we love things and we get excited about them, we share it. We tell people about our ideas. We whisper in secret darknesses about our game hypotheses. We say, confidants, what if this game existed? And when you share your excitement with your friends, Trent, something beautiful might have happened. Maybe they got excited too. God help them. Maybe they've offered to playtest your game. And let's be clear about one thing, Trent, my friend. You're very lucky. You're very, very lucky, Trent. Because playing an unfinished game is so rarely a pleasurable experience. Your friends are offering themselves up as sacrifices at the altar of your design. They're going to need to stretch gaming muscles that they might not even have used before. Playtesting requires a whole other set of skills, godlike endurance, and a kind of prioritization that you're not going to learn just playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? It's going to be hard, and I think that it's great that that's a thing your players are volunteering for. You know, but like the noble young men setting off for you know, Dieppe, they might not know what they're getting into. They might be thinking this is going to be all accolades and marching bands when really it's going to be machine guns and mustard gas, right? Like, you might be comfortable and familiar with these people. They might be gamers that you've hung out with and played games lots. You know, you might be friends with them in real life outside of your game. And you might all have lots of experience together playing a finished game, playing Dungeons and Dragons or award-winning tabletop role-playing game Dungeon World or Burning Wheel or whatever your poison is. Maybe they all work together already and you're like, yes, good, this will be the group. But what I want to stress here is you're asking them to engage in a raw, unfinished, still bleeding, not quite wholly formed mutant thing. That's something significant because you're asking them to be cruel. You're asking them to be both cruel and gentle with a thing that you've made. And that's hard. God, that's hard to do. Because you're asking them to be honest with you, to be critical, but be smart about it. You're asking them to be attentive, and to empathize with what you as a designer are trying to accomplish, at least a little. You're asking them to think and to feel and to engage in a way that a normal session of play might not always require. And it's challenging, isn't it? Like, it sounds a little scary. If somebody said to you, I need you to engage in this visceral experience with me, you might not want to say yes anymore. But it doesn't it doesn't have to be terrifying, right? There are things that you can do, and this is the point of your whole question. There are things that you can do as a group to make this experience less terrifying, right? So here's the thing. When you're playing a role-playing game together, which is to say like a finished game, a game that's been play-tested and worked out and balanced and whatever, like a finished, you bought it from a store, you got it on Amazon, and you're playing the game. You're asking your players to do a few kind of basic things, right? You're asking them to respect each other, treat each other with humanity, honor each other's contributions, and asking them to listen to each other as they contribute. You're asking them to play the rules as they're written, and trust each other to play in good faith, not to attempt to manipulate or break the rules for their own benefit. You're asking them to play the game, to engage it as a game. You're asking them to communicate as best they're able, because people communicate differently, their intent and desires, that they treat the game seriously, but treat each other's friendship and humanity more seriously than they treat the game. And I think that when we look at it from that angle, a role-playing game, like any conversation, demands much of its participants, right? So I guess what I'm saying here is that an RPG is asking you already to do a hard thing. So playtesting being hard is not that different. We're just not as experienced with it. Doing something for the first time is always a little more scary than doing something for the 100th time. Unless it's like catching a knife in your teeth. That's probably still fucking terrifying. So here's what you can ask for if you're looking to playtest your game. Here's the thing. You can ask that your players are focused on the game. A good playtest is about people engaging really hard. It's very hard in the early stages to playtest when everybody's not really in it. And this means that in return, you're going to promise them short sessions. There is no good playtest in an early stage that is like 4 hours long. Like, fuck all that. An hour. Right? 2 hours, like max, with a break in the middle to talk about the first hour. You can ask your players to play the rules as written. Now, I'm thinking particularly about a challenge that I have as a playtester, in that I'm also a designer, and so I try to design my way out of holes in rules. And that is very, very difficult for me to put away, right? Because I'm so used to doing it with finished games that I feel need adjustment. So when someone gives me a game to playtest, I have to constantly revisit in my head, like, don't try to fix this. Don't try to fix this. Don't try to fix this. This doesn't need fixing. This isn't about fixing it. This is about playing it as it's written. Because if your players are trying to interpret during play or trying to solve around problems the design has, you're never going to get anything out of the playtest because they're not reporting the problems, they're trying to fix them for you. And they're not designing this game, Trent. You are, right? So ask them not to do that if you think that's a risk. Ask them to come to the table excited, not about crafting some cogent narrative like you might in a finished game, but that they acknowledge that what's in front of them is an unfinished mess. And they're going to just try to make something neat with this mess. Just now. Just today. It's not going to be a masterpiece. It's not going to last forever. We're not crafting a colossus out of bronze. We're making wings out of wax. You know, they're going to be messy. They might fly briefly, but eventually they'll crash into the ocean. And that's okay, right? Here's what you can give them in return. Because I think this is important too, because you need to support them in doing their job. You can give them specifically framed sessions aimed at testing only what needs testing. Give your players something to give you feedback on. Is this session about character creation? Do only character creation. Don't try to play the whole game. Do one thing and then stop. Do a combat playtest. Do a social playtest. Do a character creation playtest. Test each thing on its own and then move on, right? Give your players something to work with. Seriously, like just take the time. I don't care if it's not great, but like pop open Photoshop, pop open InDesign, pop open fucking, I don't care, MS Paint, Google Docs, Excel, it doesn't matter. Make a character sheet, right? Make something they can interact with. Nothing is more frustrated than trying to play a playtest before it's ready to even be playtested. Have at least some mechanical hypothesis you want to test. Do not show up with a bunch of handwritten notes and be like, I don't know, is there a game in here? Because that's a workshop, not a playtest. Don't do that. Right? You can desire specific feedback and you can facilitate that feedback. Never, ever. And if Trent, if your players message me and they're like, Trent asked me this, I will write a mean tweet about you, Trent. Never ask, how was that? Or did you have fun? Was it good? Don't do that. Don't do it. Get out of here if you do that. Ask instead, what did you think about the choice of stats? Ask, did the selection of backgrounds seem to encompass the whole genre the way we were trying to? Ask, if you could add one class to this game, what would it be? Do you think this weapon dealt enough damage? Did this work the way you expected it to? Pick things, ask questions about those, because if you're asking general bullshit like, was that fun? You're not going to learn anything. You've wasted everybody's time. Don't do that. Don't be bad Trent. Be good Trent. And the most important thing that you as a designer can do is listen. And this is why I almost think what you want to do is like make the GM rules and stuff first, or like at least some of that shit, and give it to someone else to get them to GM it, and just watch the playtest. Because you want to listen, right? You want to listen so fucking hard your ears hurt. You want to listen and you want to ask smart questions because smart questions give you better shit to listen to. Pay attention to as much as you possibly can. I don't mean just like listening with your ears. I mean being attentive to the way that the players use the character sheets. Be attentive to the things that they get involved in or distracted by. Like, get so focused on what's happening. Record that shit and then watch it later. Review. Record. Review. Right? I don't care if you broadcast it on Twitch or put it on YouTube, but like make a recording. If you're playing on Roll20, do it. Just bust open OBS and record that shit. If you're doing it live with your friends at your table, just like record it on your phone. It's going to be so good for you later. I promise. It's going to be awkward as fuck and hard to listen to, but do it anyway. A playtest session or a series of playtest sessions is very different from playing an RPG. Honestly, it's like barely even the same thing. You're asking for different stuff, and having buy-in is even more important in this case. Be real with these people. Tell them this isn't going to be a session about telling fun stories or playing a cool game. Tell them it's going to look like that on the surface, but really it's about assessing design and giving feedback. It's a whole other skill, and you want to make sure that people are buying into that, and they're not expecting like a fun D&D experience. They're going to get a fun playtest experience instead. Maybe they hate playtesting. Maybe they're going to opt out. Maybe they're going to play for 45 minutes and be like, oh, this is so awful, and never volunteer again. That's okay. It's fine. Not everybody's a good playtester. Be transparent. So I'm going to say this because you asked specifically, you used the word campaign. Don't use the word campaign. This is not a campaign. You're not playing a campaign. I'm not nitpicking your vocabulary here. I'm just saying like, you're not going to get a campaign out of this until the game is basically done, and you can go there then. It's not going to be about playing one session and then the rules change, you play another session, then the rules change, you play another session. It's going to be about a bunch of disconnected shit early on. Later, when you get to that part where you're like, okay, now I'm just testing balance stuff, that's when you can say, all right, we're going to play 8 sessions, and we're going to try to treat this as much like a campaign as possible, but I might change some of your rules, and I'm sorry if your character becomes more or less effective, or you lose abilities, or you gain abilities, or whatever. That's okay. Because this is a playtest, you have to be all right with that. Are you all right with that? And when they say yes, thumbs up, let's go. If you want to see this in action, where every session of a game is like different rules, watch the Bloodletters campaign back when it was the Six Towers gang. Watch the first like 6 episodes, because that's 6 months of John designing Blades in the Dark. My character gains and loses abilities every session, and I try not to give a shit about it, right? I changed playbooks partway through. My XP, I got different XP for stuff. Things were just popping in and out of the character because we had all agreed that that's just how it was going to go. We were going to let John do that, and we were just going to play our characters in the moment, whatever they were. But for now, take this shit one step at a time, right? Play a session today. See how that goes. Make notes. Play a session tomorrow. Play a session in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 6 months, a year. Watch how they change. Don't do a campaign today. Session by session. Slowly. Slowly, Trent. Slowly. And as an aside, as just kind of like a final note for you here, Trent, don't be scared to just like chuck it out, right? There are versions of Dungeon World, ideas for Dungeon World, that we lit a flame and tossed into the ocean because we realized they were bad. They didn't fit the design. Maybe they were good in a different game, but not this game, right? And you'll do that. And I mean that. Like, if you love a thing but it doesn't fit the design, just put it in a box and put it on a shelf in your brain library, and you can come back to it later. It might fit in another game. It might fit as a custom thing for this game later, but don't be afraid of bad feedback, because if you're scared of bad feedback, your playtest will tank. Your game will never get good. Because a bad design can be a helpful experience. You don't have to finish a game just because you started it. Sunk cost fallacy is real. Don't do it to yourself. Don't do it to your players. But thank you for your question, Trent. I think I said your name more than any other person who's asked a question on this show. So that's it for episode 30. I've been Adam Coble. I'm going to continue to be Adam Coble. We'll be back next week for episode 31 of Office Hours, because that's how chronology works. If you want to get involved, go to www.adam-coble.com/office-hours. Fill out that form. Record your lovely voice. Google and I will do the rest. I hope I see you again real soon. Thanks for coming, everybody. It's been a delight. Bye for now.